The war was total war, where over 50 million deaths occurred, the majority of whom were civilians. I want to welcome the audience and the parents and the other students. Let me tell you a few ground rules. First of all, the trial you're about to see is completely created by the students. They've created the structure, they've created the argumentation, and each of the characters has created his or her questions. The cross-examination that takes place on the stand is completely impromptu, so the witnesses actually have no idea how the other attorneys will be attacking them. All right, without further ado, let me begin by welcoming the prosecution to the stand, where they will deliver their opening testimony. The jury before us has been chosen based on a wide jury pool. We have a variety of jury members, and the jury is also completely random. They are the ones that will be deciding the verdict for today's trial. So jury members, please raise your hand. You are in the front row. This is the jury. Thank you very much for your time. Now, prosecution, your opening statement.
Good morning. Your Honor, members of the jury, ladies and gentlemen. According to the Geneva Convention and the Nuremberg Charter...
Please speak more directly into the microphone.
Okay. According to the Geneva Convention and the Nuremberg Charter, the prosecution hereby indicts President Truman on the count of crimes against humanity. It states in Article 147 of the Fourth Geneva Convention that a war crime entails willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health, and the plunder of public or private property, wanton destructions of cities, towns, or villages, or devastation. And this is exactly what President Truman did. Over the course of months, President Truman made a series of decisions resulting in the deaths of over 500,000 Japanese civilians. The prosecution would like to establish that a military target is any military personnel that is officially part of a nation's armed forces. According to the interim committee, the targets of the fire bombings on behalf of the United States of America were the cities of Tokyo, Yokohama, Nagoya, Osaka, Kyoto, Kobe, Iwata, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki. Out of these targets, Hiroshima and Nagasaki did not have military bases, thus they were not military targets. On March 14, 1945, they killed civilians by burning them alive and destroying their city with over 300 B-29 bombs. 3 days later, the city of Kobe was hit with another 300 bombs. On June 2nd, Osaka was hit again. 4 days later, Kobe was hit again. The next day, Osaka again. The death toll for the Tokyo bombings alone was 100,000 civilians dead. Ultimately, over 500,000 civilians died through these fire bombings, which were a choice of President Truman. The fire bombings, which released 100-foot streams of fire upon detonating, sent flames through the wooden homes. People were literally sucked into the flames by a wind of superheated air. Asphalt boiled in the 1,800-degree heat. These were not soldiers being burned alive, ladies and gentlemen, but instead children, women, and the elderly running for their lives from the flames. How does one justify invoking hell? Only 3 months later, on August 1st, 1945, President Truman had leaflets dropped on 33 Japanese cities and Hiroshima and Nagasaki, warning the citizens to evacuate their cities because America is in possession of the most destructive explosive ever to be used, and it was against their homeland. If these leaflets were dropped all over, where were these non-combatants supposed to go? What if you couldn't read the leaflets? 5 days later, on August 6, 1945, in the city of Hiroshima, Japan, as children played, mothers prepared supper, and fathers worked, making a living for their family. President Truman decided their fates. These civilians lived simple lives. They had absolutely no involvement in the ongoing war. Then why did they have to pay? On August 6, 1945, as the children played, the mothers cooked, and the fathers worked, the President of the United States of America, Mr. President Harry Truman, made an order that would destroy their lives. This atomic bomb would melt the mothers, ingrain the clothing into the fathers' bodies, and burn the faces of the children off. Were these people soldiers? No. Were these people innocent civilians, and were they targeted? Yes. Only 3 days later, the same man, President Truman, would drop another, even bigger atomic bomb on another city, Nagasaki, full of innocent people. The 2 atomic bombs resulted in over 200,000 painful deaths. Even the United States Strategic Bombing Survey said in its official report that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were chosen as targets because of their concentration of activities and population. Ladies and gentlemen, who is safe from this man? If this is not a crime against humanity, what is? That's why we, the prosecution, believe that President Truman is guilty because he callously targeted civilians on countless occasions and unleashed a weapon whose potency is capable of destroying the very foundations of mankind. Thank you for your attention.
You have 2 minutes remaining.
Ladies and gentlemen, today you are going to hear from a lot of people. Survivors, politicians, scientists. They will all try to sway you into believing that this man is not a monster, but instead a glorified war hero. They will attempt to argue that Mr. Truman's reasoning in dropping the bomb was to end the war and save American lives. We know that this is not the case, and you will soon see that there is nothing heroic about the president's actions. Does being the victor of a fight exempt you from punishment? Who gives the right for a single human being to order such an action to destroy a city and turn it into nothing but dust? Truman has committed war crimes. And how does the prosecution define a war crime? Violations of the laws or customs of war, which include murder and meaningless destruction of cities, towns, or villages. What the prosecution will tell you today is that we find President Truman guilty because he targeted civilians that had nothing to do with the war. He never provided an effective warning towards the Japanese and to the rest of the world of this deadly weapon. He made unnecessary use of the bomb when Japan itself was going to surrender and was already a defeated country. He ignored the radiation effects from all scientists, whether it was from the prosecution side or the defense. He instigated the arms race between nations, and he wanted to spread terror in order to show the superiority of the United States. The arguments that I just mentioned will be proven through our witnesses. So today, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have the opportunity, an opportunity to seek justice for all innocent civilians, the children, the women, and the men, people that were just victims of a war that they couldn't control. And not only for the 2 atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but also for the endless fire bombings that were struck onto the Japanese people. You have the opportunity to set a precedent for the future of the world and to ensure that such destruction never occurs again. Thank you.
Defense, your opening statement, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Honor. Today, we have come to this court today to give substantial justification for President Truman's choice of action in ending the Second World War. Despite the American reluctance in entering the war, U.S. military involvement was deemed necessary due to Japanese provocation. Such provocations included the unwarned bombings of Pearl Harbor, as well as the imperialistic actions of violent Japanese expansion in the Southeast Asia and Pacific region. The use of an advanced nuclear weapon, such as the atomic bomb, was crucial in defending the already wounded American nation. It was the only solution in ending the war in the most efficient and life-sparing way. The Japanese were determined and cruel, and therefore the American intervention helped not only in the homeland, but neighboring countries that have been brutally conquered by the Imperial Army. President Truman's choice was exceedingly intricate because the Japanese involved not only their military on the war zone, but civilians as well. Under the reign of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a top-secret science project was convened, completed with a defined combination of only the elite specialists of nuclear weaponry, of nuclear physics, with military men of the highest rank. Among this group were Carl Compton, Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, and General Leslie Groves. These men, though from multicultural backgrounds, are witnesses to the worldwide expansion of the creation of nuclear weaponry. Each one of the proud nationalists will come up to this stand and convene you that President Truman made the right choice in utilizing the atomic bomb, given what was known at the time about the scientific improvements and worldwide progress. Many military men have been called to defend President Truman's actions because they were in front row witnesses to the cruelty of the Japanese army and understood better than any political leader sitting in Washington that the Japanese were not going to agree to an unconditional surrender. As we are a nationalistic people, it is more than safe to say that the Japanese were fanatics, for they blindly followed their emperor's order and drove themselves into their oblivion. They were educated with the mantra that it was honorable to die in combat rather than be imprisoned or killed by American soldier. This ideology is what led to the mass suicides of the cliff of Okinawa, which gave them the nickname of the Suicide Cliffs.
It has been made more than obvious by many critics of President Truman that the major conflict in the utilization of atomic weapons was the unneeded deaths of countless innocent civilians. It has come to our attention, and hopefully will come to yours as well, that the Japanese had no definition of the word civilians. Who are they to judge who is treated like a civilian and who is not, when they turn so many innocent civilians into kamikazes? There is a thin line between being a civilian and being used in the military, and the Japanese obviously crossed that line before the atomic bomb was used. In addition to their lack of defined civilians, the Japanese are absolutely no position to judge us on how we treat our civilians. After the Nanking Massacre in December of 1937, Japanese soldiers brutally slaughtered about 300,000 people, of which the majority of them were civilians and prisoners of war. Over 20,000 women reported their rape, which can only mean that there were so many more that were unreported. Can you imagine all of this happened in the course of a mere 6 weeks? Any war must have non-combatant deaths. However, the Japanese army was doing this deliberately to its maximum effect, whereas the American Chief of Staff, President Harry Truman, made a very difficult decision in an attempt to spare the maximum amount of both Japanese and American lives. As the Potsdam Conference drew to an end, the United States, Britain, and China issued a warning to Japan. The document, known as the Potsdam Declaration, called on the Japanese government to surrender unconditionally or face prompt and utter destruction. The Potsdam Declaration included language that left an opening for the retention of the emperor by calling for the establishment of a peaceful government formed by the freely expressed will of the Japanese people. There was no doubt that the freely expressed will of the Japanese people was to keep their emperor. However, by rejecting the Potsdam Declaration, the United States had no other means by which to convince the Japanese to put an end to this devastating and tragic war, which had been going on for 6 years. President Truman will come up to defend himself, stating that he was not aware the targeted cities were in fact cities populated by civilians. They were military bases. Their targets were chosen because they housed several military and naval bases, which were in charge for protecting the southern Japanese harbors, for the Japanese were expecting an inland invasion following the capture of Okinawa. The president was committed to a total victory with the least possible American deaths. This was the main motive of his decision. The prosecution will call up witnesses, trying to find some way to persuade you that President Harry Truman made the wrong decision in utilizing the bomb, the choice that effectively ended the long, cruel war taking place in the Pacific Front. However, it is our goal as a defending counsel to emphasize that the American Chief of Staff, President Harry S. Truman, made a choice, the correct choice, that forever changed the course of history. We encourage you to pay close attention to the testimonies of our witnesses and understand that President Truman made the choice most effective in ending the war, with a victory for not only the Americans, but the entire population. After all, it is the president's job to protect his people and his home with whatever means necessary. As a countermeasure towards their cruel and determined military forces, as well as an act of pure self-defense, President Truman had absolutely no choice but to utilize the atomic bomb against the Japanese. For any other alternative would have concluded with the inevitable bloody invasion of Japan, the numerous deaths on both sides, the endless indemnities to both countries. It is fantasy, not history, to believe the end of the war was at hand before the use of the atomic bomb. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. At this time, prosecution, would you like to call your first witness?
Hello. The prosecution would like to call upon the citizen of Nagasaki.
Citizen of Nagasaki, to the stand, please. Yes, here, please. Thank you for making the flight over. I want to remind you, you are under oath. Thank you. Your witness.
Can you please introduce yourself?
My name Uchiro Suzuki. I am fisherman. I wake up morning 3 o'clock. Get net and sinks. Fish good to get in morning. Then I go market. I sell fish. I take care, fix net and things and book.
Can you please tell the court what happened on August 9, 1945?
I finish fishing. I gather fish. Good day for fish. I was walking to market. Then I see flash, white, very bright light. Then I hear boom, boom. Then something pushed me very hard, push me. I hit wall. Then I no remember. I wake up very cloudy. I smell burn. My body burn. My hand, my leg, my this, burn. Very pain. But I get up, go see family. I look everywhere. Everyone dead. Many dead. I scared. I hear children scream. They scream, Tao-san. Mean father. And Ka-san, mother. I scared what happened, family.
How has the radioactivity affected you?
Radio.
The burns.
Many times where I burn, I feel pain, but no choice. Pain is pain. I build house again, work, fish, very hard. Sometimes too difficult.
Did you ever receive a warning of the bomb?
I wake up 11 o'clock. I go see family. I see paper, lot of Japanese word, but I no read. I don't know. I give paper to friend Sanji Hajimoto. He tell me, go. But go where? There's war. Go where?
Did you ever see your family again?
I go find house. I don't find house. House full, all full, don't know. I dig. I don't know. After a long time, I see family at the house dead. Dead.
Thank you.
Defense, your witness. Do you care to cross-examine this witness? Please present the microphone to the defense.
You previously stated that when you were leaving your house in the morning, you saw leaflets falling from the sky. Is that true?
I come back home and see paper.
Did you pick up one of those papers and read it?
I pick up, but no read. Don't know read.
Do you know what language the leaflet was written in?
Yes, Japanese.
And the flyers were dropped in Japan, so they could have been read by the majority of the population.
But I never go school. I don't know read.
So, you were aware that they had been dropped all over the city?
I don't know. I just know paper on house.
Do you agree that in a time of war, desperate means call for desperate measures?
I don't understand what you mean.
I mean that in a time of war, there are several deaths, both military and civilian. Do you agree with that?
I don't know. Never been war.
So you are not part of the military.
No.
Were there many people in your city that you knew of that were in the military?
No.
Okay. You were informed that you were supposed to evacuate the city because of the future bombs that were about to be dropped.
Yes, but go where?
Had your government, your emperor, who had refused to surrender, not created safety houses or evacuation plans?
One more question, please.
Evacuation. To leave the country.
I don't know.
One more question, your final question.
How do you feel that the emperor that you so worshipped as a god had let you there to die from the bombs and had not created a plan of evacuation?
He God. He tell me die, I die.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You may be seated. Prosecution, your next witness, please.
We call upon Father John A. Seams to the stage.
Irene. Thank you, Father Seams. Remind you are under oath. Prosecution, your witness.
Where were you on the morning of August 6th?
I was sitting in my room at the novice of the Society of Jesus in Nakatsuki, which for the past half year, which is around 2 kilometers outside the city of Hiroshima.
And what happened at the time of the bomb?
From my window, you could see that the whole valley was filled with a bright light, and you could feel a very strong heat wave. As I make for the door, to figure out what was happening, I hear a loud explosion and everything went black for 10 seconds. Afterwards, as I woke up, I saw that window frames had been exploded and I was covered with fragments of glass. I was bleeding from my hands and my head constantly. I attempted to get out of the room, but the door had been jammed, so I repeatedly hit the door. Once I got out, everything was in a confusion. You can see that from the other side of the valley, the forest was aflamed and peasants' houses were on fire.
Did you see any survivors?
Perhaps half an hour after the explosion, a procession of people started streaming up from the city. Many were bleeding and had suffered severe burns. The least injured would carry the seriously injured into the chapel where we could care for them. There were mothers carrying burnt babies and wounded soldiers.
When you arrived to the city of Hiroshima, what did you see?
The closer we got to the city, the greater the evidence of destruction was. Paths and bridges were blocked by fallen trunks of trees. Where the city stood, everything as the eye could see was a waste of ruins and ashes. On the floor, they laid cadavers, naked, burned cadavers, and they were covered by the rising waters. We tried to rescue all the people we could, but there were too many dead.
And what happened with the people that you rescued?
Thousands of people died later because they had no strength to carry on. They would take 3 steps and then they would collapse to the floor. Some of them seemed to be healthy at the beginning, but then they would die.
No further question, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense, your cross-examination, please.
Could you please state your nationality?
German. I'm German.
And why were you in Japan?
Teaching philosophy at the Tokyo. In Tokyo.
Okay. Were you aware of the leaflets dropped in Hiroshima to warn about the future atomic bomb that was going to be dropped?
I was aware that they were dropped in 33 cities, but I never saw the leaflet itself.
We know that other people saw the leaflets, right? So couldn't anybody warn you about them?
We had moved outside the city of Hiroshima as safety because other people thought that they were warnings, so we left. So I agreed to go.
Before you said that, you knew that an atomic bomb was going to be dropped, right?
I knew there was something in plan. I had no idea that it would be a bomb.
So, didn't your emperor create an evacuation plan for you to leave Hiroshima or leave the country in order to be safe? Or something?
I was not aware of one.
So,
Correction, this is not a Japanese citizen, so it's not his emperor.
sorry. Okay. Still, though, you had to evacuate after we told you to evacuate, correct?
We had nowhere to go.
You could leave the city. You could do something in order to protect yourself. If you stayed there when we told you to evacuate the city, then, of course, you would get harmed, correct?
But all 33 cities, we didn't know.
Is that correct? Please answer the question.
I'm not sure.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Father Seaman. You may be seated. In the series of this trial, there are some witnesses who have been brought back from the death because their testimony is so important. Would you like to call your next witness, please?
We would like to call upon Adolf Hitler.
Mr. Adolf Hitler to the stand, please. Order in the court.
Don't laugh.
Your witness.
Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself to us, sir?
I'm Adolf Hitler, the leader of Germany during the Second World War.
Why do you think the atomic bombs shouldn't have been dropped in the two Japanese cities?
The U.S.'s action to drop the atomic bomb on the two Japanese cities was pointless. Japan was anyway going to surrender. The Americans wanted to try the bombs on the two Japanese cities. They killed many civilians. It was a matter of time. Japan did not have enough time to surrender.
Adolf Hitler, how can you be prosecuting President Truman since the idea of the atom bomb was initially yours?
I never dropped a bomb on the two cities, killing thousands of people. It was only a plan. The atomic bomb was never constructed in Germany during the Second World War.
How can you prosecute President Truman for dropping the atomic bomb and accusing him of having committed a war crime if you are the one responsible for the genocide of Jews and other inferior groups, as you so call them, during the period of the Second War?
My purpose was to eliminate the Jews because they were the ones responsible for the crisis of Germany after the First World War. All the economic issues were blamed on them. So therefore, I wanted to annihilate the Jews from Germany. They were opposing my goal to make Germany the most powerful nation in the world.
Based on your idealism and your beliefs, what is your opinion of dropping the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Can you state it again?
I'm an anti-capitalist. I believe that the system behind the dropping of the atomic bomb was capitalist, and therefore I'm against it.
And one final question, and perhaps the most crucial. Do you think that the victors should also be tried and convicted?
Of course they should be tried. Allies committed the most atrocious crimes. If Truman is not convicted, that will only be because he's a victor, and that is the true injustice. Therefore, I believe that he now has to be convicted.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Defense, do you care to cross-examine this witness? Your witness.
So, Mr. Hitler, I'd like by beginning, were you ever informed about the power of the atomic bomb?
Yes, I was.
Did you find the development of the atomic bomb a logical progression of science?
Yes.
Based on that, did Germany ever foster research in order to build an atomic bomb?
Yes.
Then why did you previously say that Germany was not developing an atomic bomb, was not attempting to develop an atomic bomb?
I said that there was a plan in order to make the atomic bomb, but it was never constructed. I stopped.
Right behind you, if you look, I have documents showing that, yes, Germany was in the process of developing an atomic bomb. They had the atomic bomb. They couldn't drop it. They didn't have the time to drop it, but they had the atomic bomb. What do you have to say about that?
I'm aware of
Objection.
this.
That's false information, Your Honor. The Germans never had the
Please
bomb.
state your objection.
The Germans never had the bomb. This is just a plan that the defense is presenting, but it does not show that they ever actually had the bomb.
Yes, I'm going to sustain this objection. Can you please show evidence that this plan was actually put into action?
This plan was put into action, first of all, because of the numerous scientists that were attempting to build the bomb. Germany never dropped the bomb. Germany never had the ability to drop the bomb, but it was in the process. If it had the time, it would. We have.
Please
evidence.
ask the witness if this was a plan or if it was actually created.
Was this a plan, or
It
was
was a
it?
plan.
Okay, it was a plan. Was Germany ever aiming on building nuclear weapons?
Yes.
And then I'd like to ask, this means that could you please explain why you deliberately annihilated and exterminated the Jewish population?
Objection, Your Honor. The witness has already answered that.
Because of economic problems?
Yes.
Please restate your answer. Please answer the question.
Okay, the
Objection ruled.
Jews were responsible for the economic problems of Germany after the First World War.
This means that Germany was an aggressor in this case. Would you not agree?
Yes.
If Germany was an aggressor, shouldn't Germany be punished because of its aggression?
I was never tried, therefore I don't know if Germany should be.
But shouldn't Germany be punished for its aggression?
Your Honor, the
Please answer the question.
Can you restate the question?
Shouldn't Germany be punished for its aggression? It annihilated a population because of economic problems, as you stated. Shouldn't Germany be tried for this? Shouldn't Germany be
Sure.
punished?
Germany should be tried. That doesn't mean I should be punished, or the German population. We should be tried. But after the trial, if you find me guilty,
In the context of what you just answered, why should Truman be punished then?
because he committed, he targeted civilians. It was a very rash decision. Truman was not aware of the effects of the atomic bomb. There was no true warning. There was no point on the warning that they.
Your final question.
My final question is that Truman was forced to drop the atomic bomb in order to
Forced.
save lives, right?
How do you save lives when you drop the atomic bomb on a city, killing millions of people?
No.
Correction.
It's not millions, it's thousands.
Thank you. Adolf Hitler was dead. He did not see the actual event. You may be
Can I
seated.
ask one final question, please?
Yes, I'll allow you one final question.
So, I'd just like to say that the U.S. attacked Japan in order to end Japanese aggression. In the same sense, that Truman shouldn't be tried, according to you, because of? He tried to end Japanese aggression. Why should he be
Japan
tried?
was going to surrender anyway. How do you stop the surrender by killing thousands of people?
Do you have proof of what you just said?
Proof
Yes.
of
Thank you. That's your final question. You may be seated. Your next witness.
We would like to call Leo Ziller to the stand.
Mr. Szilard, you are under oath.
What is your profession, Mr. Zillard?
I'm a physicist, and my colleagues and I were the first ones that figured out how an atomic bomb works.
How did you get involved with the construction of the atomic bomb?
Well, the atomic bomb is also known as the Manhattan Project, and
Order in the court, please.
I started getting involved with it when I conducted an experiment with Enrico Fermi in Columbia University, in which we resulted that uranium is an element that would create a chain reaction. We came together with all the other scientists and started doing more research. This whole operation was controlled by General Groves.
Were you aware of the use of the atomic bomb?
No, I wasn't. I was the one that advised them to use the bomb as a threat. But when I realized they weren't, and they were actually going to use it to kill civilians, I wrote the petition.
Do you think the United States could have introduced this deadly weapon in an alternative way?
Yes, as mentioned in the Frank Report, which I signed, and I'll quote now. From this point of view, a demonstration of the new weapon might best be made before the eyes of the representatives of all the United Nations on the desert or a barren island. The best possible atmosphere for the achievement of an international agreement could be achieved if America could say to the world, you see what sort of weapon we had but did not use? We are ready to renounce its use in the future if other nations join us in the renunction and agree to the establishment to an efficient control. After such a demonstration, the weapon might perhaps be used against Japan if the sanction of the United Nations and if public opinion at home were obtained. Perhaps after a preliminary ultimatum to Japan to surrender, or at least to evacuate certain regions as an alternative to their total destruction. This means that the United States could have easily demonstrated the bomb not only to the Japanese, but also to the rest of the world, and could have prevented such destruction and death in the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Thank you very much.
Defense, your witness.
Dr. Sillard, you are Hungarian-born, is that correct?
Yes.
And you helped persuade President Roosevelt in the launching of the atomic bomb project.
Launching of the
Beginning.
Yes.
Why did you do this? Why did you insist that President Roosevelt, began this project?
Due to balance of power and the fact that I thought that there should be an end to the war.
So you agree that the creation of the atomic bomb would end the war?
Yes, but not the use of it.
So let me understand. You're saying that it would be better if the United States and the Manhattan Project spent whatever amount of money they spent on creating the bomb and keep it in storage?
We can either use it as a threat, or we can, as I said, use it on a desert or somewhere where it has no population or civilians that would be affected by the bomb.
So can you just, in one sentence, state your attitude towards dropping the bomb?
That I think it's wrong and that there shouldn't have been the drop of the bomb.
Did other scientists that took part of the Manhattan Project feel the same way you did?
Many did, as in my co-signers of the petition.
Was the atomic bomb an advance in nuclear science, in your opinion?
Yes.
Concerning the use of the bomb, do you feel that President Truman and those immediately below him, the Secretary of War, the Secretary of State...
Speak into the microphone, please.
Excuse me. Do you feel that President Truman and those immediately below him, such as the Secretary of War, the Secretary of State, and his advisors, gave the full and conscientious study to the alternatives?
Can you say none of the words?
Do you believe that they considered the implications and considered the use of other ways of ending the war?
Yes.
And what is your opinion? Why do you think they did not use that?
Because Truman...
Your Honor, the witness is not aware of these facts.
Yes, I'm going to sustain that objection. This witness is not privy to that information.
Do you think that the dropping of the bomb would have avoided a nuclear arms race between the countries involved?
No.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may be seated. Would the defense lawyers please approach the bench? Your next witness.
We would like to call upon the pilot of the Enola Gay.
All right. Thank you. You are under oath. Your witness.
You are Paul Tibbetts. Please tell us, what is your profession?
I'm a command pilot.
And on the 6th of August, 1945, what were you commanded to do?
I was commanded to fulfill the first atomic mission. At 2:30 a.m., we began flying, And at 9:15, after receiving orders, I dropped little boy on the city of Hiroshima.
What happened afterwards?
I saw a big mushroom cloud boiled up 45,000 feet, and it was still rising. The city had completely disappeared under a blanket of smoke and fire.
Now, what did you know about atomic bombs and their effects?
I knew it would have a large explosion and there would be casualties.
But that's all you knew.
Yes,
Right. Do you regret dropping the bomb?
I have never regretted fulfill a mission commanded to me. I'm a command pilot. Following orders is what I do for a living.
I understand. Finally, who ordered you to drop the bomb on Hiroshima and kill over 70,000 civilians?
My Commander-in-Chief, President Truman.
Thank you very much.
Defense, your witness.
So I'd like to begin by asking you, were you ever informed about the power of the atomic bomb? You gave a description, but were you ever informed about the power it had?
No, it's only that it would have a large explosion. Only this.
When you dropped the bomb, did you have any second thoughts?
No,
No second thoughts.
no.
Before you stated that
I was following orders.
you were following orders. That means that if you were following orders, that means you supported President Truman's decision, right? You were for dropping the bomb, right? Because you thought it was a perfect way to end the war, a rapid way to end the war?
I was following orders. Only this. I didn't want to commit treason and face court-martial.
Based on that, I'd like to ask a few questions about your experiences. Did you ever visit the Los Alamos, the headquarters of the Manhattan Project?
Yes,
And when you visited it, wouldn't that mean that you indirectly had knowledge of the project? If you visited the headquarters, wouldn't that mean you had knowledge of the project?
I do not recall.
Your Honor, the witness is not a scientist.
Yes, I'll sustain that objection. Can you either restate your question so it's leading into some pertinent information or ask another question?
I'd like to ask one more question. Did you ever speak to Dr. Oppenheimer, Dr. Groves?
Yes,
And speaking to them, wouldn't that mean that you would have some knowledge on the bomb?
no.
Well, you just spoke to them. I mean, what were you doing while you were speaking to them?
I do not recall.
No further questions, Your Honor?
Thank you very much. Your next witness?
We would like to call upon Albert Einstein.
Mr. Albert Einstein. Thank you.
Yes.
Your witness.
Thank you. So you are Albert Einstein. Please tell us, what is your occupation and were you involved in the Manhattan Project?
I'm a physicist, and no, I wasn't directly involved in the Manhattan Project. But however, the Manhattan Project wouldn't have happened without me, because for two reasons, actually. The first reason being that I sent a letter to FDR, ghostwritten by my colleague, Dr. Leo Slizard, and in that letter, I asked to begin creating an atomic bomb. The second reason being that without my law of mass energy equivalence, the possibilities of nuclear energy would have not been available.
And so you were fully aware of the destructive power.
Yes, I was fully aware of the destructive power.
So why did you request of President Roosevelt to begin manufacturing an atomic bomb?
That question has been asked to me by many Japanese interviewers before in the past, and I tell them the same answer every time. I'm a pacifist, actually, and I do not like weapons in general. I do not want mass destructive weapons. However, since Germany began selling uranium ores stopped selling uranium ores from Czechoslovakia, it meant that they were going to start manufacturing a nuclear bomb, which was true. So I had to make sure that they were not the only ones with a nuclear bomb, and to maintain the balance of power, United States had to create a bomb. And by United States creating a bomb, nor Germany nor America could use the bomb, and thus saving lives.
So you did this in an effort to conserve the balance of power.
Yes, I did do it in an effort to conserve balance of power.
Did you attempt to contact President Roosevelt or Truman after that message?
Yeah, I did. I sent 3 messages to Roosevelt and 1 petition to Truman, ghostwritten by Slizzard again.
And how many scientists signed this petition?
69 scientists. And unfortunately, Barnes did not give that message to the petition, did not give it to Truman.
Truman didn't even look at this petition with
No,
69
he did not.
signatures. Thank you. And do you take any pride for helping create the atomic bomb?
I do not consider myself the father of the release of atomic energy. My part in it was quite indirect. In fact, if I made one mistake in my life, the biggest mistake in my life was sending a letter to FDR asking him to start making a bomb.
Though Truman killed 200,000 Japanese citizens, is he not justified because he won the war?
I'll answer you by telling you what I taught my students in Princeton University. It is my conviction that killing under the cloak of war is nothing but an act of murder. And murder is punishable by life imprisonment, and no one is above the law. Also, Truman began a nuclear arms race, and right now the devastating damage of the nuclear bomb is very little compared to the future potentials. Increasing the bomb's mass by like 1 gram can make a huge difference.
An explosion.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Your witness, I remind the audience that the date is May 8th, 1946, and that's when the trial is set. Your witness.
Mr. Einstein,
yes.
can you restate in simple words so the audience can understand your role in the Manhattan Project?
I informed President FDR to begin manufacturing a bomb.
You have stated that you are a pacifist. That means you are against war, right?
Yes.
If you were for peace, but you discovered the theory of relativity to create the bomb, doesn't that make you a hypocrite?
Well, I didn't discover the theory of relativity to create the bomb. I did not create the bomb. The theory of relativity just states the mass energy equivalence, which in turn can be used to calculate the amount of energy that the bomb will give off, but nothing to do with the bomb.
So without your invention or discovery of the theory of relativity, the atomic bomb could not have been possible.
Yes, that is true. But as I said before, I do not consider myself the father of the release of atomic energy.
Okay, I would like you to read this for me,
Yes.
please. The circled highlighted.
The whole thing, or just the
Yeah, the
highlight?
circled highlighted.
I made one great mistake in my life when I signed a letter to President Roosevelt recommending that atom bomb be made. But there was some justification: the danger that Germans would make them.
You are of German descent, are you not?
I'm German-born, but I renounced my German passport twice.
You stated that the justification for your signing of the letter to President Roosevelt was that you were afraid or worried that the Germans would have created the bomb before the U.S. did?
Yes, I was trying to prevent the Germans from having the only bomb. But since Germany, as soon as we discovered that Germany does not have the only bomb, Germany failed to make a bomb, this way only the United States had the bomb, the balance of power was destroyed, thus the United States used it.
Thank you. We have found that the atomic bomb work that you researched was very limited, as you stated before, and was completed in 2 days in December of 1941. Is that correct?
I was not allowed to join the Manhattan Project for security reasons. As an activist and a pacifist, they did not allow me to join the Manhattan Project, and Dr. Leo Slizzard was not allowed to inform me about anything going on, but he did give me a little information.
Does it not seem suspicious to you that since you were the one who initiated the project, that you were not trusted?
Well, I was not trusted because I was actually, the government thought, this was during the Red Scare. The government thought I was a communist at some point.
And why would the government believe that?
Because I'm an activist, and I'm always I'm an activist.
Can you state for the jury the difference between activist and pacifist?
The difference between an activist and pacifist is being against the war, while an activist is someone who is actually doing something and does not necessarily have to be associated with pacifism.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Einstein. Your next witness, please.
We would like to call upon the Japanese Emergency Relief Coordinator. To the stand.
Japanese Relief Coordinator to the stand, please. You may be seated.
Sorry, but my conscience doesn't let me to.
Okay.
Could you briefly tell us your occupation?
Well, I'm the Emergency Relief Coordinator of Japan, which means that I'm a military doctor too.
And are you aware of, well, you were aware, but how damaging was the bomb in the city of Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Could you explain this in detail, please?
Well, the damage in concern of buildings, in Hiroshima, 70% of the buildings were totally destroyed and 7 of them severely damaged. And in Nagasaki, only 12% of the buildings were totally untouched.
Can the witness please speak into the microphone?
Okay. So can I repeat again what I said?
Yes, please repeat your response.
Okay, so 70% of Hiroshima's buildings were totally destroyed and 7% severely damaged, while in Nagasaki, only 12% were untouched. But human casualties, about 200,000 in both cities were instantly killed, and another 100,000 or so were injured with severe burns. And if someone can laugh at this, there were 10 prisoners of war in Hiroshima, especially. 2 of them were American and the other 8 were European. So President Truman killed his own soldiers and allies.
Was there any kind of warning for either bomb that you were aware of?
Well, I asked the people, and none of them told something about leaflets or any warning, not in any of those cities.
Objection? Well, we have documents stating that leaflets were in fact dropped and they were received by the Japanese population.
I'm going to overrule your objection. We're just simply asking if this man had seen it at that time.
Thank you.
Can I answer this question?
You can.
You just said?
No, in your cross-examination, you can present a question. Thank you.
Do you believe that Japan had enough time to sufficiently prepare for the dropping of either of the bombs?
Well, I believe that Japan had not enough time because in the first place, we weren't informed that the bomb was going to be dropped. I mean, in the HQ in Tokyo, no one knew that there was a bomb dropped in Hiroshima. And then after 3 days only, another bomb was dropped, and then Japan surrendered after a few days. So I don't know if enough supplies could be gathered to help those people.
Objection. An immaterial answer. The Japanese were given fair warning and fair time before the second bomb was dropped.
Your objection is overruled. In your cross-examination, you can approach the witness for that. Your next question.
By this time, Japan didn't have sufficient industry to still support the war effort, and also to take care of their citizens, those who were badly injured. So was there any outside help from out of Japan that was enabled to help the injured citizens?
Well, at that point, I don't think that any other country could help. And there weren't any other medical force to help. No, there were not.
No further questions.
Thank you. I want to remind the lawyers, your objections are to questions, not to answers. Okay, you can't object to an answer. You object to the question before it's responded to. Okay. Your witness, defense?
Can you briefly describe your job as relief coordinator before the use of the bombs?
Well, what I did, I was sometimes at the battlefront and actually helped some of the soldiers. I'm also a doctor.
Being a witness at the war front, did you not notice the cruelty of the Japanese and the innocents that they had killed?
Yes, I unfortunately did, and that was part that I was not involved in. I turned my back to these incidents.
So, a quote, you turned your back on the innocent civilians that the Japanese army killed?
Yeah, actually, I wasn't able to.
No, your objection is overruled. I want to hear the response. Your question?
You turned your back on the innocent civilians that the Japanese killed at the war front?
Well, I was a member of the Japanese army, and I don't think what would my fellow soldiers do if I tried and help the Chinese or others.
Despite your job in the military, as a doctor, isn't it your duty to help all those wounded?
Well,
Despite those who injured them.
yeah, I'm actually in the Japanese army, so I'm supposed only to help and supply medicine only to Japanese.
Before you stated when you were examined that the leaflets were indeed dropped, but not read by everybody. Is that correct?
Well, most of the people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki were killed. I don't know if these people read those leaflets, but the ones that were alive didn't tell me anything about leaflets.
Did it not seem suspicious to you that out of the thousand population of both cities, so many leaflets were dropped? How could not one person pick up a leaflet and read it?
I don't know. I told you that already in Hiroshima, only 166,000 died. So maybe those.
But my question refers to before the use of the bombs.
You mean before the bombs were dropped?
Before August 6th.
I don't know. I wasn't there. I went there after the bomb was dropped.
And under what means were you called to the war front?
Sometimes.
No. Under what? What were the reasons for being called? Who called you?
To go to Hiroshima? Well, the headquarters in Tokyo. I'm a member of the officer staff of Japan, so communications were cut off with Hiroshima at first, very abruptly, and we didn't know that a bomb was dropped, and back in Tokyo, we have no idea about what happened, so I had to investigate and report back to Tokyo.
Due to time constraints, that's your final question. Thank you very much. This witness may be seated.
Okay.
Thank you. Your next witness, please.
The prosecution would like to call up Stalin to the stand.
Mr. Joseph Stalin, to the stand, please. Thank you, Comrade Stalin.
Thank you.
Stalin. You are the leader of Germany, yes? Russia.
No, I'm the leader of Russia.
What was
Order
discussed,
in the court, please.
What was discussed in the Yalta and Potsdam conferences with regards to ending the war with Japan?
Okay, in Yalta we agreed that I would open the second front for President Truman by invading Manchuria. But I should mention that before the Potsdam conference, the Japanese sent me a message saying that they would surrender. So I go to Potsdam, and I was very happy because this would happen. I wouldn't have to open another war. However, at Potsdam, Mr. Truman finds it necessary to tell